What's up guys, welcome to Voicey here. This is your Thanksgiving hungover host, Captain Zach, and today's subreddit is r/IDontWorkHereLady and r/Today I Fudged Up. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell to never miss an episode. This story's called IDontWorkHereLady. This happened years ago. My dad's cousin, Robert, was visiting from Scotland for the first time. We live in Canada. He had been taking turns staying at each of my dad's siblings that lived nearby. That day, he was staying with my parents. We had had a nice lunch together at their home, but for dinner, we were going out to a nice restaurant. My mother, father, his cousin, my little bro and I, two of my aunts, and two of my uncles, so a pretty big party. We had called ahead to get a reservation. The whole family had dressed nicely since we knew we were going somewhere nice for this special occasion. The restaurant where we were going was not the #1 restaurant in the city, but it was pretty high-end. One of my personal favorites to eat in the city. The whole staff was dressed nicely, but the manager and sommelier both wore suits. We got to the restaurant maybe 15 minutes early, but our table was already ready, so we were seated right away. I was friends with the sommelier in particular and knew most of the staff pretty well, so I was talking to him a bit. We chatted about what wine they had gotten in recently. They had picked up a large collection from an estate sale that I hadn't been able to attend myself. I ordered several bottles from this new collection for the table, then went to seat myself. The dinner rush was just starting as our waiter took our orders. Robert got up and headed for the bathroom, which our server pointed out for him. As he was coming back around the corner toward our table, a skinny young guy in a tacky suit snapped his fingers at Robert, who noticed and looked at him surprised and sort of offended. The man was loud, very needlessly loud. This was a nice place. People were talking in muted tones. Rude young man says,
Hey, you! Yes, you! We're ready to order.
"Beg pardon, laddie. What are you going on about?" Robert's accent was thick as oatmeal.
My order! Take my order, we're ready!
It was at this moment Robert realized the rude young man thought he worked at the restaurant. "I don't work here, laddie." The rude young man was having none of this. His immediate anger was clearly apparent as he stood up. This situation was getting out of hand. I and my little bro both got up from the table to go back up Robert. We got there almost the same time as the manager. The rude young man, now shouting,
You can't treat me like this! Don't you know who I am?
Robert was recoiling. Having heard so much about Canadian hospitality, he was floored by this rude young man. Floor manager stepped between Robert and his aggressor as Robert was stepping back and the rude young man. Floor manager says,
Sir, I don't know who you think you are, but your behavior is unacceptable. I'm going to have to ask you to leave.
I demand you fire the server! He was very rude! You can't treat me like this, my dad owns this place! I'll have your job, I'll have all of your jobs!
This guy was so loud that the chef had to come out to see what was the matter. Dressed in black with a black heavy leather apron, heavy leather knife sheaths on each hip hung on a belt around his waist. Tattoos all over his arms and neck, muscular and a little over 6 feet tall. Chef was quite an imposing figure, particularly with the angry look on his face. At this point, the whole restaurant was staring at the rude young man. Chef, in an aggressive, but not overly loud, yet commanding voice.
This is over. You're out of here. Get up and get out. Now!
Chef's command allowed no rebuke. The skinny little pissant looked terrified. He and his lady friends both got up looking horrified and rushed out of the hospital. I thought he was going to make another comment as he fled, but he just scurried away. Several people cheered. Several others clapped as Chef retreated back to the kitchen. The excitement over, we ended up having a great rest of our meal. The floor manager ended up comping the whole meal, nearly 200 grand. Both my dad and I really wanted to pay, but he just refused to take our cards. So we ended up just leaving a big pile of cash on the table when we left. The following week, when I went back to the place with a friend, the sommelier was just itching to dish the news. Turned out the rude young man's dad had indeed owned the restaurant. Part owner. He was a wealthy local landowner, businessman, and restaurateur. Unfortunately for that little pissant, his father had not been on his side at all when he tried to get everyone fired. Much to his dismay, his father instead took away his trust fund, the penthouse he was living in, and his car. Kid ended up having to get a job for the first time in his life. Don't you guys think it's a beautiful thing when a kid with a Malfoy complex gets shown his place? Because I do. Oh, and also, sorry for that Scottish accent. This story's called Bookstores and Angry Old People. I go to Indigo, a Canadian bookstore chain, very often to pick up some books to read, obviously. One day, I was looking at books to get, and this older lady comes literally bolting at me. It almost seemed like she was going to tackle me. She takes a quick stop right in front of me, stares at me, then bolts, and takes a sharp turn down a different aisle. I just looked at some random lady, and we had a laugh, then continued browsing. I was in the crime section, which is just a small aisle, then there's an entire corner with the fiction books in the back of the store, which is where the lady ran off toward. I went back there to look at different books. I walk around the corner and see this lady, and I am not joking when I say this, pull out a freaking white cane, like the ones that fold up that blind people use, and unfolds it and begins to knock a crap ton of books down off the top shelves. She did not look like she was attempting to get a book. She looked like she was intending to make a mess. She then looks at me and noticed I saw her do this. Then this is where everything went downhill with her.
These books, they fell all over me. Do you work here? Did you stock these shelves?
I laugh nervously because I don't even know what I just saw. No, I wish I worked here. I love this place.
If you lie to me again, you won't see the end of me. I'll be here every day and night waiting for you so I can give you more hell for the awful job you did stocking the shelving.
I mean, okay. I'm here like once a month at least, so if you want. But I mean it. I wish I worked here, but I don't.
I'm tired of you stupid kids doing your job in a lazy manner than not being held accountable for the problems that come with their horrible duties.
Okay, I'm tired too. I'm a cashier at my company name, so if you want to pop by for proof I'm not lying, I work Mondays, Wednesdays, Saturdays, and Sundays.
I'm going to get you fired. You don't treat your elders like this.
Then a worker hears me laughing dramatically at this old lady whose face is so red from me catching her do this. I see the worker and just start exposing her. Well, you should have thought about how you'd like to be treated before I caught you pulling the books onto yourself.
Ma'am, this young lady was throwing books at me. She reached on the top shelf and threw them at me.
The worker looked at me and then the shelf. I'm 5'3", okay? The top shelf is like 7 to 8 feet high. Worker literally laughed.
I'll be back in a few seconds.
She walked around the corner toward this little ledge that they have that looks off to the rest of the store, so she was still in earshot of us. She left for maybe 20 minutes. I continued to look at books while she called her husband to tell him how I'm going to be fired from both of my jobs when I only have one. The worker comes back with her manager.
Ma'am, you gotta get going. We have a camera right there to point at cameras, and we saw you pulling the books down. I don't know what you're trying to do, but...
Worker gets rudely interrupted.
Oh my goodness, is this man the manager? That girl over there? You need to fire her.
She cries in fear of being exposed. She was actually shaking too. I could see her hands shaking so much. I think she thought she was going to be arrested or something. I don't know.
No, she doesn't even work here. And she's dealt with you pretty well, clearly. I didn't hear any yelling coming from her. Only you. So please, if you will.
She left screaming and yelling, still going on about getting me fired from both of my jobs. Once again, I only have one. I knew something was up with that lady when she started to bolt toward me in the store. But yeah, I went back the next day hoping for a scream of the day, but she didn't show up. Makes me super sad. FYI, didn't get the job at the store. Manager led me on. Okay, so that story made for some pretty interesting visuals. Honestly, the whole old lady rushing at that girl, stopping and staring at her, then running back around the shelf thing, that's nightmare fuel. Like, that is straight up horror movie footage. I don't know, like, horror movies usually don't scare me, like, at all. because, I don't know, the effects and stuff like that, because I know it's fake, so it's just funny. However, stuff like that, that gives me the heebie-jeebies, man. This story's called Lady Mistakes Me for My Friend's Babysitter. I'm not sure if this counts, but hey, why not? This is one of many stories. Me and my friend were about 11 or 12 at the time. I was really tall for my age and was often mistaken for a 14 or 15-year-old due to my manner of speaking and my deep voice. We all went to a strict school where we were taught to respect our elders no matter what. Me, my friends, and our parents had just arrived at the best Italian restaurant in our area. The service was really slow due to how many people were arriving for the dinner rush. There's a playground in front of the restaurant, so we tell our parents what we want to order and run out to play. I'm introverted and didn't feel comfortable playing on swings meant for 5-year-olds. But that didn't stop my friends from making a fool of themselves while I sat and watched from a bench a little ways back. There wasn't anyone on the playground but us, so I don't know why I had the feeling something bad was about to happen, but I was right. I look up from my phone to see a woman with a "Can I speak to your manager" haircut walking over to my friends with a very young kid, maybe 3 or 4. I get up and start walking over to see what the problem is and if I need to get our parents. And that is when the wrath of Karen is unleashed on us. Here's the cast. Lady, friends 1 through 3, me, my mother. Excuse me. My friends ignore her at first because 1, stranger danger, 2, they didn't think she was talking to them. Excuse me. I don't know if they looked up because they finally realized that she was talking to them or because they were just plain nosy. Yes, ma'am. You're disrupting the entire playground, you know? We're sorry. We didn't realize anyone else was here. Well, that doesn't make it okay to... I make it over just in time. Maybe because I was dressed completely different from my friends or the fact I was so tall. Are you their babysitter? My friends snicker a bit, and friend 3 is crying with internal laughter. As I said, I'm really tall, at least a foot taller than my friends. Lady is just shorter than me. Excuse me? While clapping her hands. Are you their babysitter? No, I'm... Because if you are, you're doing a terrible job watching over them. They've been disturbing the entire playground. At this point, I'm terrified and kinda annoyed at the same time. My social anxiety kicks in, and I just go quiet. Lady goes off on a rant at me about how I'm meant to take care of kids and how she's going to get me fired if I don't take them off the playground. My mom hears the commotion and walks over. I'm sorry, but is there a problem here? Lady finally realizes that I'm not the babysitter and that now she's got a mama bird in front of her. My mom was shorter than her, but definitely intimidating. Lady just walked away as red as a tomato from embarrassment. We never saw her again. Okay, the one thing I'm getting out of this is a foot taller than all of your friends? That's insane, especially at that young of an age. This story's called Today I Fudged Up and Drugged My Parents and Ruined Thanksgiving. Obligatory, this was last year on Thanksgiving. So growing up, my parents were always very anti-drug and especially anti-weed because they hate the smell. My mom tried pot in college once, but it didn't get her high and she didn't like it. My dad has never smoked anything in his life or even seen any kinds of drugs in real life. I, on the other hand, love weed and smoke it multiple times a day. That became an issue when I was living with my parents. And then, after I moved out, it was an issue whenever I was over visiting. After a long conversation, my parents agreed that I could smoke outside in the backyard, back in a wooded area. Happened to be the same wooded area part of my backyard where the dog was trained to crap. But that's beside the point. After a few years of me smoking in the yard openly and coming back inside and hanging out with my family, my parents grew more and more comfortable with marijuana. The fact that marijuana has been such a huge topic in the news with all of its medicinal benefits also helped my case too. So last year, I was really into taking dabs. For those who don't know, those are marijuana concentrated oil. Dabs are very, very potent, and they also make your THC tolerance skyrocket. I had some distillate dabs last Thanksgiving that I brought to my parents' house to smoke throughout the festivities. The best part of distillate dabs is that you can eat them or apply them to any food and it becomes inedible. So I put some on Oreos for me and my brother to have. Each had about 1/10 of a gram of distillate on it. We were drinking with our parents throughout the day, and about an hour after we ate the Oreos, we felt perfectly warm and cozy. We began talking to our parents about how great it felt to be high and getting ready for a giant feast. My parents were both a bit tipsy from drinking all day, and they said it sounds fun to be high, and that they wanted to try it. So I made them each an Oreo with 1/10 of a gram of distillate on it. I was so excited my parents were finally trying weed. I have been telling them they should try it for so long for their various back and sleeping issues. An hour after they ate the Oreos, they were laughing and having a good time. Then, about an hour and a half later, about 10 minutes after we started eating, my mom got a funny look on her face. My dad said, "If you need to, you can go lay down for a bit. We can bring your food when you're ready." And she said okay. She went to her room and we continued eating, assuming she was just sleepy from being so stoned. I went in to check on her and she was in bed sobbing, saying the room was spinning and she was too stoned. I'm like, crap. So I get her a bucket in case she throws up and turn off the lights and lit a candle and tried to get her to relax. Then I went back to the dinner table and my dad is just staring at his wine glass. I ask if he's okay and he slowly nods yes. Then he excuses himself to the bathroom. From there we could all clearly hear him throwing up violently. He then comes back out shaking, saying, "What's going on? Why do I feel like I'm dying?" And the crap show had really begun. Then for the next few hours, I was just going back and forth trying to comfort my parents and apologizing to them for giving them too much. My dad threw up a total of 7 times and had the worst nausea of his life. My mom cried the entire night and couldn't sleep. Eventually, I got them both to bed and I walked out into the dining room and just stared at the table. All of our plates remained half-eaten and untouched. I had completely ruined Thanksgiving. I have a very high tolerance to THC, and I gave my parents the same dose I gave myself. Like, what an idiot. I really messed up, and now my family constantly jokes about the time I poisoned mom and dad. And for my birthday this year, my parents bought me a family-sized pack of Oreos. I'm happy we can laugh about it now, but damn, did I really mess up? I actually did poison my parents. First and foremost, we gotta appreciate how he actually talked to his parents about it instead of doing it behind their backs. And wow, that sounds like a rowdy Thanksgiving. I don't know about you, but I would be terrified if I saw my parents high on anything. Because my dad is a bit of a he's a big bit of a hard ass, because he's literally always mean. So him being high would be weird. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell to never miss an episode.